Hey guys, so in today's video I'm going to show you how to bypass a Google Recaptcha using Python and AntiCaptcha. Before we get started, I'll just show you how a CAPTCHA works. So the first thing we'll do is inspect the page and we'll type in G Recaptcha response. We can see there's actually a text area where the token is placed after you solve the CAPTCHA. So if we change the display properties of the CSS text box to take off none, we can actually see the text box below the CAPTCHA. Now I will just solve the CAPTCHA to show you that the token does show up in the text box. We can see after I solve the CAPTCHA that the text box is filled out with the token, and when I click submit, the CAPTCHA works. So the service we're going to use to solve the CAPTCHA is called AntiCaptcha. There are other competitors such as TwoCaptcha. We'll go back to the CAPTCHA and we can see these image CAPTCHAs. They aren't necessarily just about clicking the images. They are actually looking how you move your mouse and other signs that you're actually a human and not a robot just using something like Selenium. What AntiCaptcha does is you send the CAPTCHA information to an actual person. They solve the CAPTCHA, copy the token, and send it to you. And then you place the token in the text box and click submit, and the CAPTCHA is solved. These services aren't very expensive. For CAPTCHAs like this, you can expect a couple cents per CAPTCHA. So I'm going to get started here in a pie chart editor. Before we get started, we're going to need a couple libraries like the AntiCaptcha library, Selenium, and WebDriver Manager. Now I'll just import all the libraries we need. So the first thing we're going to do is set up our Selenium driver, and we'll use WebDriver to do this with Chrome driver. So you could also just point to the path of your Chrome WebDriver, but I find this easier. Next, we'll just copy the URL, and in this case, we're just doing the demo page. Now we will get the page. What we're going to need from the page is the site key, and we can find that by just inspecting the page by typing in site key. We'll need this data site key, and an easy trick I like to do when using Selenium is just in Google copying the element XPath. Now we will just find the element by XPath, paste in what we have, and we're going to need the outer HTML. If we print the site key, we can see we are getting the outer HTML we need, but we actually need to parse out the site key. So you could use regex here. I just like to use split to make it easy. So we'll do site key dot split. We'll take the right side of the site key we're looking for and we'll split that. And since we want the left side of that, we'll put an index of 0. Now when we print the site key, we can see we have the left side. Now we just need to get rid of the extra stuff on the left side of the site key. So we'll just copy this piece and do an index of 1 since we want the right side of that piece. Now when we print, you can see we have a clean site key. Next, we will set up our solver. In this case, we'll use Recaptcha v2 proxy list since we're not too worried about proxies. And then we'll set our solver verbose to 1. And if you set it to 0, you'll kind of be in limbo on how long it's taking them to solve the CAPTCHA. Next, I'll just set my API key, and this can be found in your AntiCaptcha settings. And in this case, since I'm using PyCharm, I set it to an environment variable, which you can find in this tab. Next, I just set the website URL, so we'll just copy in our old URL that we saved in a variable, and we also need the site key that we cleaned. So now we can set up the solver to find the response. Next, I'll just add some error handling so we know what's going on with the response if it did fail. So looking back at our CAPTCHA, we need the text area to be visible to place the token in. Now I'm just going to copy in the next few lines of code so I don't mistype, but I'll explain each line. So in this first line, we're just using JavaScript to edit the page. So we're finding that text area, Recaptcha response text area, and we are just making it visible by changing the CSS display. On this next line, we're just placing in the response into the text area. Lastly, we're setting the text area back to none, and the reason we do this is because the text area actually overlaps the submit button. So in Selenium, if we want to click the submit button, it's going to accidentally click in the text area. Lastly, we just need to click on the button. So we'll go back to our demo, and if we inspect the button, we can just copy the XPath. So now we'll just do driver.findElement by XPath, paste in our XPath, and then click. And lastly, I'll just set a sleep timer for 20 seconds so you can see that the CAPTCHA was solved before the browser window closes. Finally, we'll just run the script. You can see a task has been created, so we know they're working on the CAPTCHA. In PyCharm, we can see the response was printed, and if we look up at our browser Selenium instance, we can see that the CAPTCHA was solved successfully. Since there weren't any sleep statements between those final executes, it happened faster than you could see, but we can see this method does work with Recaptcha Captcha. I plan on making more web scraping videos. If you liked the video or found it helpful, it would really help me out if you subscribed and liked the video. Let me know in the comments below what other types of videos you'd like to see.